The year was 1558, and a fragile kingdom waited for its fate. The death of Mary I left England shaken, torn apart by religious wars, battered by failed policies, and fearful of its place in the world. Onto that throne stepped a young woman of only 25, a woman many thought would never survive the storms of power. Yet she carried herself with poise, with charm, with iron hidden beneath silk. Her name was Elizabeth Tudor, and from the moment she was crowned, the people of England felt as if a new dawn had broken. For 45 years she would rule, and in that time she would not only restore stability, she would turn her country into a shining beacon of culture, strength, and wonder. This was not a reign of shadows and whispers. It was a reign of brilliance, of brightness, of a queen who lit the stage like no other. Elizabeth's childhood was steeped in danger. She was the daughter of Henry VIII and Anne Boleyn, a marriage that shocked Europe and split England from Rome. But that story ended in blood, for when Elizabeth was just a toddler, her mother was executed by her father's command. Declared illegitimate, she grew up as a princess without certainty, always one wrong step from ruin. Yet those early years forged her. She learned the art of silence, of listening, of reading faces. She became a master observer, and she filled her mind with knowledge. She studied Greek, Latin, French, Italian, and Spanish until she could debate scholars in their own tongue. She devoured history, philosophy, and scripture. She was never meant to fade quietly into the background. From the very beginning, she was preparing for destiny. When she finally ascended to the throne, Elizabeth inherited more than a crown. She inherited fear, suspicion, and the delicate balance of a nation on the edge. Her sister Mary's reign had been marred by violence and division, but Elizabeth was different. She believed in unity, in compromise, in finding common ground. At her coronation, she made herself not only the ruler, but the symbol of renewal. Riding through London dressed in dazzling robes, her red hair gleaming, she smiled and waved, and the people felt as though hope itself had taken human form. Elizabeth understood something vital. Power was not only politics, power was image, power was theatre, and she was a master actress. Her obsession with presentation became legendary. She owned more than 2,000 gowns, glittering in jewels and silks, though in truth she often returned to the same favorites until they wore thin. Her wardrobe was her armor, her crown a stage prop, her gowns declarations of majesty. She believed that to rule was not only to command, but to dazzle, and with every shimmering outfit, she reminded her subjects that their queen was radiant, untouchable, almost divine. Elizabeth ruled with sharp wit and brilliant cunning, but she was also filled with vitality. She adored dancing, and long after her youth had passed, she would outlast younger courtiers on the dance floor, spinning, leaping, laughing until they were breathless. She thrived in music, surrounding herself with instruments and performers. Her court was alive with song and festivity. In her presence, even the shadows of politics seemed to lift, replaced by the rhythm of life itself. She adored the theatre, and it blossomed under her reign. Shakespeare, Marlowe, and Jonson filled the stages with plays that remain immortal. She saw her own reflection in their stories of kings and queens, villains and lovers, and she cherished the power of words. But Elizabeth herself was the greatest performer of all. Every audience with her, every speech, every procession was a show carefully rehearsed, and she played her role to perfection. Yet behind the glittering facade lay quirks that made her human, even endearing. She had an insatiable sweet tooth. Sugar was rare and expensive, yet Elizabeth consumed it without restraint until her teeth blackened. Instead of shame, it became a trend. Nobles darkened their teeth with soot to imitate her. The Queen's flaws became fashion. She also swore with shocking creativity. In moments of anger, she unleashed a storm of curses in English, French, or Italian, leaving even hardened soldiers stunned. But once her fury cooled, she could laugh and charm as though nothing had passed. She had her eccentricities too. Among her court were exotic pets, including a mischievous monkey that sometimes perched on her shoulder, tugging at her hair while ambassadors spoke of treaties and wars. The image of the Virgin Queen with a playful companion softened her aura, reminding all that behind the majesty was still a woman who loved amusement. She was deeply superstitious, consulting astrologers and omens before crucial decisions, believing that the stars held wisdom no counsel could provide. For all her brilliance, she still clung to the mysteries of fate, but she also feared medicine. In an age of bloodletting and crude remedies, Elizabeth distrusted her doctors. She often refused treatments, preferring to endure illness rather than submit to their knives and potions. She carried her strength in silence, guarding her body with the same care she guarded her crown. When smallpox scarred her skin, she turned to heavy white makeup to cover it, yet the very powder she used was laced with poison. The mask that preserved her image also slowly harmed her, but she bore it as part of the cost of rule. As the years passed, age crept upon her, but she refused to yield to it. She banned mirrors from her chambers, unwilling to see time's toll reflected back. Her official portraits became carefully crafted illusions, showing her as eternally young, eternally strong. She was no longer a woman bound by flesh. She was an icon, a legend sculpted by paint and pageantry. The greatest test of her reign came in 1588, when the Spanish Armada threatened to crush England beneath Catholic might. Elizabeth rode to Tilbury to face her troops, clad in armor, her voice fierce. She declared that though she was a woman, she had the heart and stomach of a king. In that moment, the soldiers roared in loyalty, their fear transformed into fire. The Armada would be scattered, defeated by storms and English steel, and Elizabeth would stand as the radiant protector of her realm. It was her shining hour, the moment when her courage became immortal. She never married, and this became both mystery and power. Suitors from across Europe courted her, but she refused them all. Some said she sacrificed love for her country. Others said she used her unmarried state as a weapon, playing princes against one another. What mattered most was that she remained sovereign over her own fate. She was the Virgin Queen, wedded only to England. She flirted, she teased, she kept the court enchanted, but she gave her hand to no man. Her independence was her crown's greatest jewel. Her reign was not without shadows. She ordered executions when survival demanded it, and she lived with betrayal always at her door. She aged, she weakened, she grew weary, but she never let her people see despair. Instead, she wrapped her life in brightness, surrounding herself with music, laughter, and celebration. She was a woman who had known loneliness and fear, yet she turned her throne into a stage of light. Elizabeth's quirks, her eccentricities, her brilliance, all blended into a reign unlike any other. She cursed like a soldier, danced like a girl, ate sugar until her teeth blackened, painted her face with poison, banned mirrors, loved her monkey, chased omens, hoarded gowns, feared her doctors, and dazzled with her smile. She was human and majestic, flawed and radiant, mortal and eternal all at once. She did not simply rule England, she became England, and through her, the nation learned how to shine. When she died in 1603, her people wept not just for their queen, but for an age that ended with her. They called it a golden age, a time when art flourished, when England found its voice, when the Virgin Queen lit the path. Her funeral was a sea of grief, but also of pride, for they knew they had lived under one of the greatest rulers the world had ever known. Centuries later, Elizabeth I still shines. She is remembered as the flame that would not be extinguished, the queen who turned survival into spectacle, who danced through shadows with fire in her eyes. She was radiant, unconventional, and unafraid. More than a monarch in the margins of history, she became the story itself, spun from silk, steeped in sugar, lifted by laughter, and burning with light. But history has even more fascinating leaders waiting in the shadows. Stick around and subscribe. Let's explore their worlds together. History isn't just old stories. It's an epic adventure full of power, ambition, and incredible tales. Thank you for watching.